So let's talk about irony, and there are actually 3 different types of irony. I'm going to go over all 3 types here, and just know right now that you only need to find one example of one type of irony in your reading. I'm not going to require that you find an example of each type, but I'm going to teach you about each type. The first one being verbal irony. This is when someone says the opposite of what they really mean or feel. It's not necessarily sarcasm, but sarcasm is pretty much always verbal irony. So if you're not familiar with sarcasm, when I go over the examples, I'm sure you'll recognize some. Sarcasm usually has more of a negative connotation or a mean intent, whereas verbal irony doesn't necessarily have to be that kind of venomous, biting sort of speech. So let's look at some examples. So this is an example of a pretty benign, not hurtful or sarcastic type of verbal irony. If it's storming outside and somebody says, "Lovely weather we're having," okay, which is more like just a corny joke. So obviously the person is saying the opposite of what they really mean. What they really mean is it says crappy weather, okay, because it's storming really badly. So that's a type of verbal irony. Somebody trips and falls in the hallway and a student says, "Smooth move," okay. This is not really sarcasm, but it is leaning more on the meant to be kind of snarky, I should say, type of speech. You don't mean that they are smooth, okay? What you mean is that they're clumsy. So you're saying the opposite of what you really mean. Okay, this one I would say is probably in that sarcasm zone. It's meant to be kind of rude and biting to the person. If a student bombs a test, their friend says, "Nice one, Einstein," okay? Einstein was literally a genius, so you mean the opposite of that. You mean that they're stupid, which is not nice, by the way. So that's verbal irony, and this is how you can analyze verbal irony. You ask yourself, what does the writer and speaker really mean? Which is kind of what I just did naturally as I was going over those examples with you. And you're going to ask, what effect does saying the opposite of the intended meaning have? Okay. A lot of times there's a bit of humor in it. Okay. It's meant to be funny when we use verbal irony in this way. But you'll have to analyze it on a case-by-case basis. So the second type of irony we're going to talk about is dramatic irony. This is when the audience or the reader knows something important that the character doesn't know. I know something you don't know. So a classic example of this is when you're watching a horror movie and a character goes into the basement, for example, and you know that the killer's down there, but they don't. Basically, you should never go in a basement ever, okay? There's always a killer down there. Just kidding. But that would be a type of dramatic irony, because if this is a movie, in this case you'd be audience, the audience knows something that a character does not know, okay? And it's something important, that they could die down there. Here's another example. A character blissfully plans her wedding. We, the audience, know that her fiancé is cheating on her. Ouch! Okay, so this is another type of dramatic irony. We know something important that the character does not know. So how do we analyze this? We ask ourselves, what do I know that the character doesn't know, and how might this character missing this specific information affect things? So how is this going to unfold with them not knowing that important information? The last type of irony is situational irony. This is when the opposite of what is intended or expected is what happens. So here are some examples. You have an annoying friend who posts on Facebook about how pointless Facebook is. Okay? This doesn't make much sense. They shouldn't be on Facebook if they obviously think that it is pointless. A fire station burns down. Ouch! You would not expect that because they're supposed to put out fires. A marriage counselor files for divorce, okay, which you would expect that a marriage counselor could mend their own marriage, and yet they're filing for divorce. The last one, a soldier survives the war, fights in a dangerous war, but dies in a car crash as soon as he returns home. Oh man. So a lot of these kind of make you flinch, okay? Irony is cruel. In fact, cruel irony is a phrase that you hear pretty often. So how would you analyze this? Here are the questions you would ask yourself. Why is this outcome the opposite of what's expected? And what mood or feelings does this turn of events generate? So what is the effect of it? How does it make me feel that the opposite of what was expected happened? Okay, really can throw you for a loop. So real quick, irony, again, you only need to locate an example of one type of it and put that in here. I picked dramatic irony and I labeled it. So whichever type you pick, please specify at the top which type of irony you found. Mine was dramatic irony. So I put my quote here and I specified afterward which book that it came from and put the page number. I'm not going to do an analysis and explanation on this one for you because you're all going to be picking different types of irony anyway, and you've watched me analyze and explain on all these other types. So do your best with that. And of course, if you have big questions, please let me know.